Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
Hey, welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. I'm Chris Carr.
And I'm Kristen Johnson.
And we're rocking the COVID on a Tuesday night.
Yes, we
Thank
are.
you for listening to
Every Tuesday night.
2020.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a while. Hope everybody's staying safe and doing well and staying healthy as you can be. And we appreciate you guys listening tonight. We have an awesome guest, right, Chris?
Yes, we do. We have a wonderful guest. Her name is Debra Katz. She is the founder of the International School of Clairvoyance. She is a renowned psychic, author, remote viewer, researcher, and public speaker. She has a master's degree in social work. Debra also specializes in readings, which include clairvoyance, remote viewing, mediumship, and energy healings.
Yes.
Debra, you also have some books as well. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I want to know who's the Bigfoot and who's the bunny.
Well, my shoe size is slightly larger.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll go with that.
He is the Bigfoot. We have a cute story that goes with that. So, but thank you again for joining us. Chris, you want to tell them about her books?
Yeah, Debra is the author of several books, including You Are Psychic, The Art of Clairvoyance, Extraordinary Psychic, Proven Techniques to Master Your Natural Psychic Abilities, which I have owned for quite some time. Yeah. So, I'm a big fan of. And also Freeing the Genie Within, Manifesting Abundance, Creativity, and Success in Your Life. And it looks like you have co-authored some other books. Is that right, Debra?
I just have some chapters in some other books. But we don't have to talk about my books. I'm just happy to chat with you guys about.
Yeah, I've been a fan of yours for a while, and we've been following your Facebook posts for a bit through the coronavirus, and we felt that you've been spot on. Now, I haven't been following them long enough to find out the information I found out tonight from talking to you earlier, or emailing you, that you kind of have been on this for some time.
Yeah, well, I just found an email yesterday. It was a couple of recording links, a session I did with a client. I have a client who's a stockbroker, and every once in a while we would get together, and he wanted to know when the market was going to drop. And which I thought, well, that's an interesting question. That sounds a little depressing, but we've been looking at this for years. And so I found recordings from 2016, and I'd completely forgotten what was in them. So listen to them. And while I didn't say anything about a virus, but I did very much get, like, right before it dropped, people would be expecting it to drop like a few days before, so it wouldn't be, a total shock. I got that we'd be in a state where we lost total trust in the government, where people would know, like, right in advance that they were about to lose all income, and pretty much just our government would just break down, and people would pretty much, be on their own, and just people were walking around like in a daze. So it seemed like all our social structures were just breaking apart at that point. So this was surprising, because really when we were looking at the drop, I thought, we'd just be talking about like a little drop or something, that's what I thought he wanted to know. Just, the market can go up and down just a little bit. So I thought that it corresponded pretty well. But at the time, we really thought that we were just looking for a change in the stock market over the next few months, or, that's what he was thinking. So we didn't think that it was going to take 4 years from that time. And I've had clients tell me in the quite a bit that I'll tell them what's going to happen, and a lot of times they say, it did happen, but it took several years later than we thought it would. So,
well, it's interesting that you would have a client that's asking you about stock market in detail, and you had that same client for years. That shows a little bit of, obviously you were helping him, so or him or her.
Yeah, really.
So very good. But also you also sent me some information about Black Death type posts from last year, from 2019 in June, I think. You sent me a screenshot of something where you were working on something about a plague-like drawing, if you will.
Yeah, that was something else. I totally forgot. This was sometime during the summer of 2019, and I woke up one morning with a terrible headache, and so, which is kind of strange to wake up with a headache. So I just tuned into it to see what was going on with me, and I had this image of something black, this black object just kind of like falling from space, and then when I tuned into it a little more, I just heard the words Black Death, and it made me think of some kind of sickness. So I looked it up, and then of course it's referring to the plague about 100 years ago. So I posted it in a remote viewing Facebook group, because one of the things I've learned over the years is if you have something that you think might be precognitive about something in the future, it's good to put it somewhere. So I like to put things usually like in remote viewing forums or so, where, other remote viewers or psychics, they're forgiving if you're wrong. So, it's a public record, but it's not like they're going to, everyone understands we have correct predictions and sometimes incorrect. So,
right. You take a very scientific method to your work, and it's not, fooling around mediumship, if you will. Like you're a remote viewer. I have seen you on New Thinking Aloud.
Yes.
You're referenced in parapsychology often, and you put it kind of to the test in a remote viewing. I know in that world that they really mark things more in a scientific and a repetitive mode to see if you can recreate certain things. It's not like you're just guessing, so to speak.
Yes. And that's the thing. And it's interesting that you say you're not guessing, because, the early parapsychology tests, at least in the United States, which were primarily run by J.B. Ryan and people at Duke University, they called it guessing, and they mostly had people do card guessing. And then but they were thinking that it would be just your subconscious that would say yes or no, or would say, oh, it's a black card or red card. And then they went with the Zener cards with different symbols on the cards, but they still would say it was psi guessing. But with remote viewing or clairvoyance, it's not a binary choice or, four options. There's no guessing involved, because you have to wait until you get an image. You have to wait until you get some kind of descriptive picture information. And so then it just opens up all sorts of possibilities. So it really, makes it more, if you do get something correct, it's a lot more impressive than if you only had 2 to 4 choices where it could be a guess. That's where, statistics gets in there, and I can go on forever, because I have a passion for research, but it's out there. There's a lot of downsides to it too. And I go back and forth between, we need more research, and the other end of it is research is way too restrictive. And a lot of times it doesn't capture the richness of what we're doing. Or, you could have a couple just incredible hits, and then you have a bunch of misses. So statistically, it looks like you haven't done a good job. But the one hit you had, it might have been, 1 in a 5,000 shot that you would get something like that. So I had that once in a research project where I didn't do so well on all of the targets, but one was I had an image of a man, half bug, like a beetle, but it was a man and a beetle combined. And it turned out the photograph that I was tuning into that was at a distance, this was actually for Stanley Krippner's, one of his experiments. I don't know if you've heard of Stanley, but he's been a researcher for a long time. But anyway, so when I saw the picture, it was half man and half bug. So I thought, well, that's a pretty unusual thing. So that was a good hit. But then I didn't have all of my sessions correct. So again, statistically, it wasn't, a terrific run of things. So
Right.
yeah.
My point is too also that you look at things statistically, and we're looking at it from kind of a scientific standpoint. We're more or less like paranormal people. I know that is almost, I hate to use this term, but the bastard child of parapsychology, right? So we're not always taken as seriously by serious people. And I see you kind of in between all that, looking at it, realistically, because there are certainly skills that people adapt and don't necessarily have the opportunities to fine tune in a scientific way. And I respect your work. It's really good. So
well, and
Yes.
I have to say, you guys are way more fun to hang out with. Some of these parapsychologists, and as long as you're doing your work in a careful way. I mean, what you guys do, I'm assuming you guys go out and do investigations and things like that, and helping people. Parapsychologists are not really helping people unless they do other things, but usually there's not, except I'll backtrack on that. It's just that it's meaningful to people to get validation, to get scientific validation of their own experiences. So in that respect, it's enormously helpful. But
I agree. Yeah,
but
totally.
when you're going on and doing investigations or helping people understand why they're having different phenomenon happening in their house, strange things happening, that's what's really beneficial to them. So yeah, it's all good, but it is interesting because these are all such different worlds, right? Like the paranormal, the parapsychology, and then there's like the energy healers, and then there's the remote viewers, and in remote viewing, there's these different sects of people, and it gets so divided and then competitive and things like that. And, really
It does. And it's silly because we're all kind of doing the same sort of work.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It's the same. And we're all excited about the same thing. It's just we go after it from different angles and different ways and personality types. And, it's sometimes I think, well, why am I involved in parapsychology? Because I'm not a statistician. I don't like math. I'm not, I don't spell well. I'm not a structured person. All the things you're supposed to have with that. I'm not, but there's so many variables when it comes to any of this stuff. And so I like the idea that you study something systematically and you have to rule out, I guess there's a part of me that is skeptical or thinks that we need to be, rational about things. I've taken pictures of things that I had one experience with a friend, like something was appearing in front of my camera lens. And I was screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, you have to see this. This is the most incredible thing. We've got like the greatest photo ever. And then we were like screaming we were traveling around Sedona, Arizona. And so on the Red Rocks, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? And then it dawned on us, it was our thumb. We had our thumb in front of the lens. And at first we're like, no, we can't be that stupid. So we tested it and we put our thumb, and sure enough, it was like how the sunlight was hitting our thumb. And, so you have to
great.
We're
only human, but you have to see, you can debunk things first. Chris and I do the same thing. We try to debunk everything first, and then, get some validation if it's legit.
Absolutely, especially like before showing it to other people and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's embarrassing when you post it all over your social media and it's your thumb.
Right. So it's not your thumb. That's a loss.
We're only human.
Oh, but we all try. And no, I just wanted to point that stuff out. But having bought your book like a couple years ago, Extraordinary Psychic, which I like a lot. I added you in Facebook, and I'm watching a post, and I noticed that you're talking about coronavirus, and I'm like, I agree with everything this woman is saying. This is
Yes,
absolutely right.
we do.
It's that born in a refrigerator. Wait a minute. That's what I've been thinking. Not
That's
that
what we
I
were
have the
saying.
abilities that you do, but I have the suspicion, at least. So we wanted to talk about some of your coronavirus predictions. Maybe you can walk us through where you started with that. I know last year you were talking about it, like I mentioned, and maybe even a few years ago.
Yeah, I'll pull up my document here. So I've just been taking notes, and basically a lot of times I can't sleep, and so I'm just kind of laying there tuning in. And actually, the first thing that happened was I'm on the board of directors for the International Remote Viewing Association, and we were supposed to have our conference, our annual conference, 20th year anniversary in Las Vegas in mid-March. And we were going to be having a board meeting to go over the conference, and a couple of the other board members were expressing, this was before all the states said we had to just shut everything down, so people were still having conferences. And I was really excited about the conference because I don't get out a lot, and that's my time to see everyone. And so I really wanted to go forward with having the conference. And so I fell asleep and had a dream, and in the dream, Trump was there. So I guess it was kind of a nightmare, not quite a dream. But
we're with you.
Sorry to the Trump supporters out there. I still love you guys too. But anyway, so Trump was just in my dream, and he was standing there, and he was talking to me, and he was saying, "No, this is going to be bigger. This is going to be really big, much bigger." So I then, when I woke up, I was just certain that this was way more serious than I realized that it was. So, so often what I'm kind of going for when I'm either having precognitive dreams or clairvoyant experiences is I'm going for what goes against my logic, because that helps me know it's not just my own analytical mind. So at that point, I just started to, and we ended up canceling the conference. And as it turned out, they shut down the hotel 2 days before we were supposed to have the conference. And so it saved a lot of people, money and time, just us being able to, know that we weren't going to go ahead. And other people also had some different psychic experiences. So I've got some sun in my eyes here. So then one of the things, I started to tune in every few days or so. And one of the things I got, when they were saying how many people were dying in Italy. So I wanted to know, well, why are so many people dying in Italy? What's going on? So I tuned in, and I got an image of it being in the air. And at that point, they were just saying, it's only through, it could be projectile, like if you sneeze, but it's not airborne. And I told a few people, and they were like, no, well, that's wrong. It's not airborne. And I said, I know it's airborne because I had an image of all these people, and then it was kind of like a fog, or I couldn't tell if it was like the pollution or fog. It wasn't way up in the sky, but it was in between them and above them, maybe a couple feet or so, like the tallest person. So I knew that it was lingering in the air. And as the news has come out, it does appear that it can stay in the air. And I just saw something a couple of days ago where they were saying that one researcher in Italy found that some of the virus in pollution particles. I don't know if you
just watched that.
We just actually reading that ourselves.
Saw that.
And
we saw that you had posted that on your Facebook, and we're like, yep, guarantee it's airborne and it has pollution. And then what was it, 2 days ago, Chris? 2 days ago, we found the one with the pollution that they had said out of Italy. And I said to Chris, my God, she is right spot on with this.
Yep. We've been watching it, and we saw you post, and we thought that when you posted it, we were thinking this thing is hanging around longer. It's got a longer shelf life. It has a way of floating or something. There's something about it that's making it incredibly contagious, like way beyond most flus. Like even a 6 foot distancing really is not enough. This thing is getting around.
The man was saying, the doctor was saying 30 feet would be better, a little over 30 feet.
Sure. Winds, pollutants, other things. that they keep coming out with every day. There's a new story, and like, it does
Just
this, by
don't
the
know
way.
much
We
about it.
didn't know, but it does
Right.
this. And
Studying it now, you don't know
it
much
seems
about
like
it.
the things you've been posting have been pretty spot on,
They have.
kind of what we've been thinking.
Yeah, well, and it's helped me personally to make decisions about what I'm doing. And basically, I haven't gone out in 2 months beyond our property. We're fortunate where we had just moved here in February. We're in Oregon, right on the river, and we live in a wilderness area. So, I can go out and take walks, but I haven't even been to the store in 2 months. My husband's
Wow.
going, but he'll go once a week at the most. We try to have him just go like once every 2 weeks. And because I've just felt like this is really just so, and I'm not a, super paranoid person or anything, but just from everything I've been tuning into, I've just felt like, this would just be so easy to just breathe it in. And so just trying to be really careful.
Right.
So,
and that seems to be the case. Like, we're in Massachusetts, and like we're, I think, the third state down now on,
Yes.
most infections and problems
no.
and all that. So the steps that we're going through,
It's insane.
my kids think I'm
It's an
nuts, but I'm
hour.
like, spraying all my groceries with disinfectant.
Right.
I'm going like
Just spray them
spraying the
and put
bottom
them
of my
away.
shoes,
Yeah.
craziness, just so worried about getting this thing,
Yeah, it is crazy, and my heart goes out to people who have kids right there. I actually have a 21-year-old son. He's in Hawaii, and of course I'm worried about him out there. But it's so hard. How it's so hard for young people. I think back to when I was in my early 20s, how I would have felt if I had to stay home on a Saturday night, or be told not to hang out with my friends.
Right.
So
You'd be like, sure.
Yeah. How old are your
27 and a
kids?
25. Right now, I have a 27 and a 25-year-old that are literally quarantining with us. Yeah, they're going nuts, and I have a 12-year-old as well here. And I like you said, I don't know what he thinks. I wouldn't know what to think myself when I was 12. So we try to explain it the best we can, and I have two other children. One's in Florida. She's 23, and my daughter, who's, well, I'm showing my age, is 29, and she's on the front line. She's a police officer. So
Oh my
that's really
God.
scary. We haven't seen any of them because we can't,
Right. I can't see my father. He's in his 70s. My daughter is 21, and she's working as a pharmacy tech right now. So
Oh my gosh. So
it's like,
she's
she's on
really
the front
out there.
line, as it was, and like Alyssa, like your daughter too, and like all our kids, just being out there, and of course they do have this kind of ambivalence toward it, like it's not that real, and
Right.
yeah, it's very scary, and I suspect their immune systems are strong enough to get past it. I worry a little bit more about like my dad, being in his 70s and stuff, like he really cannot, be around us at all. And, we have secondary health conditions as well, so we worry about it.
Yeah, it is scary. But, I have to say that in the last week or so, whenever I tune in, I'm seeing it going away. And I really hesitate to say that because logically, I don't see how that is possible, right? Like logically, my mind cannot really conceive of how it's just going to go away. But my imagery is showing me that it just goes away. It disappears, or something combats it. And I'm not exactly sure. I think that it may be because I was getting something about the company Merck. Am I saying it right? MERCK.
Yes.
So something about them, and or at least a company that's similar, that's already been doing virus explorations for a while. So that may have something to do with it, but I just keep getting these images like something coming in and stabbing it, or I'll be looking at it and suddenly it just zooms off my field of vision. So I've had that happen like 3 or 4 times. And then here's the interesting thing. Have you guys heard about Sylvia Browne's prediction about this?
No.
I saw a thing about a book she had in, I think it was 2012 or something. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. Yes. Let me see if I can even pull this up really quick. I asked my assistant to just help me to put together. I was curious to see what other psychics had said about this. And I looked at this right before I came on tonight. So I hadn't even looked at this. And here, I have it right here. I'll read this to you. So it's from her book, End of Days, Predictions and Prophecies. And it says on page 312, in around 2020, a severe pneumonia-like illness will spread throughout the globe, attacking the lungs and the bronchial tubes and resisting all known treatments. Almost more baffling than the illness itself will be the fact that it will suddenly vanish as quickly as it arrived, attack again 10 years later, and then disappear completely. So that I thought, well, that's interesting, because I was getting that it was going to be going away before, I read this. So, not that we can know for sure, but
Yeah, no, I saw that, and I know she's deceased now, and that's an incredible thing. I just saw that quote and page floating around, and I remember her. One of the other things that you predicted, you were talking about cows at first, and then that turned to milk.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, I turned on my TV, and what did I see? I saw farmers dumping tens of thousands of gallons of milk, because they have no market for it because of the way the food supply chain is configured now.
Yeah, and someone pointed that out to me when I saw the image. I've been getting things about cows and female cows that can produce milk for a while, but the other day, it just out of nowhere, I saw this image of milk pouring, and inside the milk was all this money. So my interpretation was that maybe there was something about where milk is going to become very valuable, because maybe, and I was thinking, well, maybe there's antibodies in it, or that's somehow related to a cure. Now, could I have misinterpreted that, and it was just about money being poured out, which like you're saying? But I'm hoping that it has something to really do with the actual cure. So I did look it up a couple of days ago, and it looked like cows in their stomachs have a form of COVID-19, or one of the coronaviruses. I think it might, but I'm not sure which, if it is the 19 or something similar. So, in talking about this, like, I feel like I sound vague, so it's a little frustrating that I don't know what that image meant, and I didn't really get too much more about it, but it was definitely like money coming out of the or
udder.
Inside the milk.
Out of the udder, if you will.
Right.
And I've been asking my husband.
Maybe that is where it'll lie. I don't know. And I understand, don't feel bad that things are vague. I'm not expecting any kind of like crazy exact predictions. But as time has gone on, everything you've been posting and talking about, even like last year when you were talking about the Black Death, and it was you were working with somebody there, and there was an image of an ocean, and it made me think. My first thought was like, oh, it crossed the ocean, that kind of thing. You've been pretty spot on with that stuff.
Yeah.
And, we're all, of course, looking for answers, but we don't have a massive detail. But I think there was a positive message in all of it.
Yeah. So hopefully it is going to go away. I'm trying to think what else might be interesting to, well, the other thing I got just yesterday was that people were kind of in a daze, and they weren't really all that conscious right now, but it was like people were going to suddenly get it together, like in a very short time, almost like they become more aware that they have to take things into their own hands. So I saw, like, right now, we're all, I mean, myself included, like, what's the government going to do? Like, we all need help. Everyone needs so much help. And at some point soon, we were just going to be like, screw them. We need to take things into our own hands. And then I felt like this, you've been hearing about how there's farms that have all this food and they're just dumping the food, and how there might be shortages. Well, that doesn't have to happen. Right now there's a problem basically with the middlemen, the people that are transporting, the people that are coordinating these systems. But if you can get the hungry people together with the people that have all this food, everyone should be able, people could still pay them, and they would just be paying a lot less because you've cut out all the people in the middle. So I don't know how that's going to go, but my sense was pretty soon I just saw like light bulbs going off with people. And, humans are so creative. I mean, just imagine all the people, how there's so many creative people out there. So you bring together millions of innovative, creative people, but it's like we have to really, we were just going to snap out of it and
cut out that middleman. Sure.
No, they're dumping everything. I'm sorry, Chris. They were dumping everything. Why can't there's like tons of people lining up in food banks for miles and miles. They should just, I hate to say it, but donate that, but maybe get something back from that middleman or the government later on, instead of just dumping all this fresh food. And it's really, it's awful.
Just need some kind of connection point, maybe on a local level, be it state or just totally non-government, really, between farms and people, organizing, the movement of this food, because it shouldn't go to waste. And I've seen videos of farmers like destroying crops, and it's sad. It's like, really?
Yeah.
I'm having trouble finding certain things in my supermarket, and hearing, well, geez, the toilet paper thing, if they could package it differently, you would have more on your shelves. Well, that's not helping me right now. Can we, move beyond that? And there has to be ways, and I'm sure you're right. And there will be clever, creative ways that people work around these things.
Yeah. And, I think that's the positive thing, is that we're having to be innovative and make changes. And a lot of times change is so slow. I think change is going to be so speeded up now. And, I teach classes online, and I have for about 15 years, intuitive development classes, remote viewing, clairvoyance, and totally either on webinar or teleseminar even, because when we're doing psychic work, we don't need to see each other, right? We need to close our eyes and not have visual cues. So I've been working this way for years, and it works great. People form intimate relationships. People get to be friends, people who are all over the world, just by being on the telephone in a group experience. So for years, I've been saying, well, why aren't more people meeting like this? Of course, you lose some of what you get in person, but then sometimes you don't have, a lot of times you avoid some of just the, extra BS you get when you bring people together, and, whether it's having to drive through traffic, or it's just like people just sometimes different conflicts arising. So everything just can work out really well so especially in education, in business meetings, the way that everyone is now realizing that we have to meet
is a nice outcome here.
Yes.
Telemedicine has come up a big way. You can meet with your doctor, and they can basically examine you without touching you, and eliminate a lot of things without you going into the office. It saves you the trip and the time, and that's nice.
Yeah. There's exactly, my husband just got a call from his doctor, and they're going to be meeting that way. And there's so many doctor's appointments where, you drive for half a day to get there. You sit in an office for 2 hours and the doctor doesn't even examine you, right? He's like going over your test results. So sure, it's one thing if you need an examination, and, yes, it could be a problem if, I'm sure doctors all the time catch things, the person went in for a standard appointment and they look terrible and sent them to the hospital. But some of that could still be seen on video, or you ask the person how they're doing and they say, oh, I'm having, heart palpitations or whatever. But it's so much more convenient, and we're saving resources. We're not spending money on gas, which I know some people are, upset about, that people aren't spending money on gas. But
not us.
We're
we're happy to see gas prices fall, and we're also happy to see, if you don't mind saying, the planet in a certain way is taking itself back, right? So like the canals of Italy now are clear, and there's fish in them where there was never fish in them. There's literally dolphins, flying up and down them. It's almost creepy. It's like wildlife is kind of, making a comeback. We're seeing different birds. I saw an eagle last week. I haven't seen in a while. And there might be some good to come out of this. I don't know what the healthy balance will be between man and nature, but maybe there is an unbalance. And what do you think of that thought, that maybe the Mother Nature, for lack of a better word, is taking herself back?
Yeah, well, I think that the planet is definitely trying to get back into equilibrium. Now, one of the things I saw psychically, I try to separate out like what my own thoughts are, and what I'm getting on an intuitive level. And one of the things that I was getting was something's happened with our timelines. And I don't even quite know what that means, but I have just been getting this sense that, in fact, I was reading a client and just kind of looking at what was happening in their life. And that this is where I first saw this, where like the timeline changed, where what's happening right now really wasn't supposed to be happening. And I don't quite understand that. The future and time and all that is so complicated, even, on a psychic level. But yeah, the timelines have somehow changed. Something came in that was not originally going to be happening. And that's almost why things seem weird. And I keep getting this image of like resetting, but it's like someone keeps pressing the button to reset, but it's not just a one reset. It's almost like there's these glitches every day right now. So there's like something might be true one day, and then the next it's not going to be true because we're on a different timeline, and then a different timeline. And I don't think that this has happened. I don't know if it's ever happened before, but yeah, what do you think about that?
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think our human perception of time and stuff is probably different than, other beings. Put it that way. I don't know. Things could be changing in a different manner. Look at all that's kind of changed as far as like our media and our perceptions as far as the last couple of years,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was the way I just thought is maybe it really was biological and it just escaped, and maybe that's why it's totally different. Certain timelines.
Right. We don't know if whether it's malicious or anything like that. But I know you mentioned it was born in a refrigerator, and I feel like that. Like this thing is like too good. It's just too damn contagious. Like it moves too easily, and we're learning new things about it every day as far as how it can move. It can move in pollutants. It can, your animals can get it now. Apparently, there's cats in New York that have coronavirus. And
there's a dog today got diagnosed with it.
Oh my gosh, really? I hadn't heard that. Where do you know where that was?
I don't know what state, but I forgot to write it down. But yes, I just saw it just before we came on, and I don't know what state it was, but yeah, it's a little dog, and he they said that 3 of the people in the house had COVID-19, so the dog ended up contracting it from
Oh
them.
my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. And I wonder if that dog could then, speaking of dogs, I have my husky right here. I don't know if you can see her.
Oh,
She,
beautiful.
can you see her? That's funny.
Yes, beautiful.
She wants to go out. Yeah.
Oh, there she is. Hey, girl.
So, yeah, I heard that there were some lions, I believe they were, in a zoo. Did you hear about that? That they tested positive for it. There were like 3. I don't remember if they were lions or cougars, but I do wonder if a dog has it, and then someone else, say the dog is outside and someone else pets the dog, could they actually get it from the dog?
I think they know that right now. They didn't even realize that they could really even contract it. So I don't know if they're asymptomatic, like you're saying, like we can contract it, another animal can contract it. We don't know. They're still
right. We've
up in the
been
air with
watching
that.
this for a long time. Chris and I were watching this
Yeah.
back in
December.
December, you know, on YouTube and leaked videos and different things from Wuhan. And there was actually a point where the people were putting little face masks on their dogs, if I recall.
Yeah.
Back in January or February, you know,
That would be.
it was exploding there.
You know
And,
what? Can I run and let my dog out? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Of course you can.
Right, I'll be right back.
That's great.
No, we're real people here.
Yes, we are.
No worries.
I think everything.
So you remember that? Do you remember the picture? I believe I sent it to you with like I think it was a person with like 2 dogs and they had like little tiny dog masks for their dogs.
Yeah, I do, and I said we need those for our cats.
Right.
Yeah.
The cats need it.
Gloves, stuff. Cats.
At that point, the testing was not good, and I think the way they were testing it was just the presence within the nostrils, not necessarily an infection, you know, within the animals.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that long ago, right? Like 2 months ago, where they were saying that people don't need masks. Do you remember that?
Right. That's right.
They were
that changed
recommending
quickly.
don't wear masks, and you know, it was really about there weren't enough masks to go around. You know, which they weren't initially saying that was the reason. They were telling us that, but
I believe that. I believe it's read between the lines, you know, with them. It's so ridiculous how I know I'm going to make a lot of people mad right now, but it's just ridiculous how they're handling this. It really is.
Yeah.
Could have been managed so much.
They could have sent us masks. You know, could have started there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to buy masks on eBay and Amazon, and they're being sent from China of all things. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's where we get them. So,
you know, years ago, I've written some screenplays, and I had an idea to do a story called Made in China. And it was about how, you know, everything we have here is made in China. And one day China decides to declare war against us. And little do we know that they've like implanted explosive devices and different diseases and things within all of our items. And then I was going to turn this into a comedy, even though that doesn't sound very funny, where the people find this out and they all have to run outside and take off their clothes because all their clothes were made in China. So now you've got a bunch of naked people running around because they can't have any of their clothes. But, you know, just the idea that if you really had to get rid of everything you had that was made in China, that would show you how much is made in China, right? So how for our national defense can it be good to be dependent in the way that we are on for anything? But I mean, imagine if we we're at war with them.
And
What would we do when we're so dependent on them for?
Would ask them to send some bullets and guns.
There you go. And probably some of the manufacturers over there, they would send us things because they want to make their money. So,
sure.
But yeah.
I know some of when we were first talking about a vaccine for this, the government, they were saying that some of the components that go into the vaccine we can't have here. We don't have here. We have to go and because China has it, so we'd have to send it to China. And that makes no sense. Why can't our manufacturers make that here? Apparently, they're the only ones that have this component that goes into the vaccine. I don't understand.
Yeah,
and that's really scary.
Or maybe
especially, speaking of,
and everything comes down to economics.
Well, it is.
It goes beyond safety and precaution. Everything is just for the buck. And
right.
I know, like almost everything in my home is made in China.
Yeah.
Really, I've looked around. We've talked about this before.
Sure, everything.
Years ago, it's like, wow, every electronic, which makes up a lot of it, little thing I seem to have, somewhere on it's made in China.
And table, I don't know, but
yeah,
there's a dependency there that maybe we need to kind of lift, and not everybody wants to be in a manufacturing job either, and I understand that too, but somewhere along the line there's probably a solution that works for everyone. Where do you see things going forward? What I know this hour ran pretty quick because we started a little late, but where do you see us in 2 months? What are you seeing now?
I do not really know. I am going to try to do some more work on it in the next week or so, but I really don't know, other than the vision I keep having that this is just going to go away. Now, when is it just going to go away? I don't know. So I do need to tune in and ask that what I see in 2 months. Right now, I haven't seen it yet. So, I feel like I'm just kind of going day by day. And I'm going to do a little bit more work.
Maybe I shouldn't have put a number to it, but I did see you did see things going better, getting a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and I had a vision a few weeks ago where, in addition to these images of it just going away, another image was of like a tsunami where it hits and then it recedes. So everything is telling me this is going to go away. But then when it receded, there was a big mess on the land. How it looked in Japan with the tsunami, and everything just was all over the place. So very, very messy. And
there was some very interesting things about Georgia that you had mentioned, and I know we're running low on time, but
Georgia, and I'm trying to remember what that. Part of my problem is I kind of go into a different state and I forget what I saw with Georgia. I was very upset when I heard that they were reopening so quickly, and that they were. At first, I was like, why would they be opening up tattoo parlors and beauty shops and bowling alleys? And then I started, feeling rather pessimistic, like, are they, and, beauty parlors and tattoo parlors, these are places where people have such intimate physical contact. And I started thinking, well, these aren't the kind of people that are friends with the governor, right? Like, who's making these decisions. Like, these aren't the people he hangs out with. So is this a matter of him not caring about these kinds of people who work in places like this, which I've worked in places like that. So, does he not care about people such as ourselves? And is this some kind of social experiment? But then when I psychically tuned into it, well, a couple things. I got what he's concerned about are the owners of the malls where they have their businesses. So he doesn't really care so much about them, but he's willing to put their lives at risk, but the people that they pay rent to are people who are calling him every day. And then I also saw from his perspective, he's got people calling him, or he did, to reopen, people that they don't care. All they want to do is reopen. And he's hearing from them, like they are relentless.
Like from all directions, they're not getting rent. We need help. You need these finances, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just overwhelmed, like 24/7 with people just requesting money and
so
fix this because I'm not getting my money.
Yeah, so it really helped me to get like out of my own perspective, because from my own perspective, like, I'm just in my house and fine here, and it's like, okay, we should all social distance, but he had so much pressure on him, and he was trying to do the right thing, and some of the people were very aggressive with him. But I did get this image of like a gun up to his head, like this was kind of like political suicide. So that told me it's not going to go very well there. They're going to, things are not going to go well with what's happening. So that would be my prediction with Georgia. And, this is the thing, like when we talk about, well, what's going to happen, where are we talking about it, right? Like this is always an issue when you're trying to get something so large, are we talking about a single state? Are we talking about everyone? People are having such different experiences, and that's part of it. Some people like are so divided from this, and I mean so separate, it's barely even like part of their life, because they just work out of their house, or they're in an area where this isn't really going on. Other people have had like 4, 5, 6, 7 people in their families die, and this is Armageddon for them. So we have such different experiences. So what are we tuning into, or what are we trying to, get a sense of?
So a totally different thing depending where you're at. And again, we thank you so much for coming on tonight. Yeah. Excuse me. It was awesome.
Oh, no.
Yes, thank you
so
again.
Sorry. I know we're over time and we started a little late, but
no
we love your stuff.
We would love to.
Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me through my website at debrakatz.com, DebraKatz.com, or letter R psychic.com. And check out my classes. I have a remote viewing class starting this week, and a clairvoyant reading and healing class coming up in a couple of weeks. And I am offering substantial discounts for people who've been affected by the virus. So
that's wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. It was so
Thank
much fun, guys. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
We'd like to thank Joe Montaldo for his engineering and support.
Thank you, Joe.
Be sure to look for us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.
You can also find us at Dark Horse Paranormal and Purple Raven Paranormal by searching those very same outlets. You can email us at bigfootandthebunny@gmail.com. Thank you.
Catch you later.
Bye.